Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Relating to DevSecOps, where we explore the development, security, and operational issues of today so that we can solve real-world engineering and security problems with people that face them on the ground, just like Mr. Mike McCabe here. Mike has been facing some audio and video issues today, so these are real-world IT problems.
True DevSecOps problems.
True DevSecOps problems. But today, we're going to be talking about staffing in security, specifically around, well, not specifically around DevSecOps, but in security and how it affects DevSecOps and maybe how you can use some DevOps practices to help with this problem. Mike and I have both been facing some unique challenges in understaffing or even just talking to folks in the industry about staffing. And so we thought it might be a good topic for today for our monthly, bi-weekly episode that we schedule every month or so. So Mike, in the world of application security staffing, what do you think is the largest challenge right now? Like, what is the staffing challenge today, from your perspective, maybe in the consulting world or that you've seen with clients?
It's a good question. I mean, I think any niche area, we kind of talked about this before we started, but supposedly there's, millions of open cyber jobs and tons of people looking for jobs. But I think there's definitely a mismatch between what people need and what people the skills people have. I feel like there's a ton of training and certifications and things like that out there to get people skilled and trained up on these things, but they're not really teaching the skills, and they're definitely not giving the people the experience they need to actually do these jobs. So I think there's like a mismatch between the market and what people are offering. And so I think it's still hard to find the right people when you're going out to the market to find someone to do application security, because it's a unique skill set. It's, do you have a developer background and mindset? Do you have a hacker, break things mindset? Can you bring those two things together to fix things? Can you speak to developers? Can you understand, tons of different technologies? I think the challenging thing in AppSec and cloud security is you can't be like the Java security guy. You can't just be like, I only do Java AppSec. If you have a PHP app, go talk to someone else. It's really hard to specialize. So you have to have all these different skill sets, and that's something that not everyone has. And so it's hard, I think, to find good people still in the market to really do the work. And I don't think there's some decent training out there, I think, for this. But I think a lot of the training is too high level, too focused on just hacking, and not enough on the building side to really teach people who are interested in AppSec and CloudSec the engineering brain part of it.
Yeah, I was going to ask you, what are the skills? What is the skill that someone needs? Or what is if you could list your top 3 skills for the application security engineer of today, what would they be?
I mean, I think you have to be able to. There are people who are really good, they're really good bug bounty people out there who probably don't program that much. So if you just want to find bugs, there's probably that's a very valuable skill set if you just want to hack things and break stuff all day. But to be kind of an AppSec engineer, I think you have to understand how all aspects of things work. How does infrastructure work? How do programming languages work? Because you can't just be like, hey, I broke this thing, go fix it. That doesn't move the needle at all, because developers, how many times have we been on phone calls with developers and hey, I fixed this cross-site scripting by putting a regex to filter out script. So you can't put a script tag in. So then you put on an on error tag or something else, and then you have cross-site scripting again. Really dumb basic example, but if you don't have, if you only teach people how to hack things and not how to fix things, how valuable is that in a company? Because you need to have people who understand the full context of things and work with developers to actually fix things. Because discovering the risk is only 50% of the whole thing. A risk register full of risks that don't ever get remediated is sort of worthless, besides being yeah, we're horribly insecure and we know it. So that's my take on it. Semi-hot, semi-spicy, maybe.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think it's necessarily spicy, but it's like what is spicy? But we face this. We're constantly talking about in the industry that there's a shortage of security staffing, and we are simultaneously facing the problem of having more and more understaffed security teams. And it seems like a real paradox, right? Is that, okay, well, we have all of these security positions we're claiming that we have, and but we're not staffing them. And we still have understaffed, we still have an understaffed industry. And like, to me, we talk about the skills that you can have, and like, I know that, over a decade ago, entering the security world, everyone's answer was like, you can do anything in security. You could do, corporate security. You could do operational security. You could do IT security, network security, and now cloud security, AppSec, DevSecOps. There's all these things. So as somebody coming into this world, like, what do they focus on? And I think that's a really challenging question, because maybe it's that companies have like different needs, but I don't know, like, how do we fix that problem? Like, it seems like it's a common problem that folks don't have the skills that they need to perform the job, but how do they go and get those skills? Is it just experience? And if it's experience and we're not staffing those positions, how do people get the experience?
Yeah. I think it's a good question, and it's tricky because it is a catch-22. It's like, hey, I want to hire someone with experience. Well, how do I get experience? Well, I'll get hired to get the experience.
Right.
But it's kind of like...
And that sucks. That sucks for folks entering the workforce.
Yeah, I mean, I think security, despite all the like, oh, we're hiring tons of security people thing, I think it's an incredibly hard industry to really get into outside of maybe like the government and huge companies where you're doing like SOC work, which, no shame there. We all started like on the help desk or doing very level 1 IT type stuff. Everyone has to start somewhere, but it's hard to break into the industry and just start doing like web app testing or pen testing or red teaming out of the gate. I think for some good reason, I think it's kind of like, do you want to hire the doctor that just came straight out of college with no experience? Or do you want to hire the doctor who has 10 years of real world experience to do it? But I think the thing is, we're not good as an industry of like hiring junior folks, training them up. I think in the consulting space where, you and I spend a lot of time, it's kind of like, you don't want to hire someone you have to spend 6 months to get kind of value out of if you're thinking about it as a business. I think larger companies, they hire more junior folks because they do have tasks they can hand off to them more easily. But even that, I was reading something that really well-educated, like 4.0 students out of high-end computer science schools are struggling to get jobs right now too. Mm-hmm. So I think tech in general has just been hit really hard with layoffs and not hiring, and we haven't seen that change that much. I've seen a little bit in the security space change, but definitely not immune to it like we have been in other kind of economic slowdowns or recessions.
Yeah.
So, I don't know.
I mean, thinking about it, I think that if you are graduating with a degree in security, you should be focused on getting a non-security position. I think that the best thing that you can do to get experience is to have the security background, but not target a dedicated security position unless you're going into like pen testing or like offensive security or something like that, or you do want to hunt bugs. Because I think that you have to have some real world experience of being on, like you said, the build side, and that we need to stop considering the fact that there is an entry-level security position, because I don't think that actually exists. I think that if you come into a security position with only security knowledge and you don't have any of the other background, that you don't really have the ability to see how the security is applied to the product or to the project. And I think the reason that folks have a hard time maybe getting hired just out of school is because they don't have that. And of course, somebody would, what would you rather have? Like somebody that has a cybersecurity degree and comes in and wants to, because they know that they want to make whatever, 150 grand a year. And so they're looking for these positions. Or would you rather have like a developer that worked for 2 years and then is a security engineer, has 1 year of security engineering experience?
Yeah.
So I think that you need both sides of it in some way. Either somebody that has had experience in support, in help desk, in IT, in development, something that lays the foundation for their ability to work effectively in security.
Yeah, I agree with you. I mean, I think it's, to keep with my bad analogies, it's kind of like being trained to be a road safety engineer, not knowing how roads work. Yeah, you
Right.
know the concept of a guardrail, but how do you know how roads work? Like how do you know how traffic flows or how things are built or anything like that? Like, yeah, there's been a similar in computer science. There's been an obsession with high-paying cyber jobs because it's the hot topic, and people think there's a lot of money, and that it can be a good career, but it's hard to just jump into securing things if you don't understand what those things are and how they work.
Yeah. So just shifting gears a little bit, then, given that, so we're a security engineer, and we're in this understaffed position, and you have a small team for the size of your organization, which I think a lot of us are facing right now. The ratio of security to the engineering teams that they support or the organizations that they support, I think is getting larger. That's the right term for a ratio, right? Like the gap is getting larger. And so if you're in this type of situation, what do you think are some ways that folks can get over that hurdle or mitigate that problem beyond just hiring more people?
I mean, I think something you've said before, and I'm sure you could opine on this more, is how you deputize other people, non-security people, to help on the security space. I mean, I think that's huge if you're well-staffed or not as well-staffed, but I think spending a lot of time on education and helping people understand, if it's AppSec, what are the bad patterns to look for, and so they can help you kind of do some of the work that you can't do. You can't review if you're one AppSec person in a decent sized company, you can't review every PR, every code base, everything like that. So having more senior developers be kind of your deputy to say, like, look for these bad patterns, enforce these kind of things, like run through some kind of process for libraries when they get added. I think that's one kind of powerful process to bring more people into the security fold. It's always tricky because, again, those folks are also busy doing a lot of work, so it's not like they're going to have a ton of cycles to be like, all right, I'll spend half my time on security now. But I definitely think it's one way to kind of build the team without physically building the team out.
Yeah. No, I agree with you 100% there. I think that if you, not even deputizing folks, but just identifying the people that are more security aware and care about the quality of their product and of the organization. I can't tell you how many times I've faced or been given insight into issues that I never would have known about if it hadn't been for those. I mean, we call them security champions or advocates or whatever you want to say, deputies. And without those folks having eyes and ears in places that you don't get it, because you have this combination of people that are just not necessarily malicious, but maybe ignorant of security issues or just don't care as much or aren't passionate about it. And then they're in debates or conversations around security issues or data privacy issues, and they're raising it to you, for help. That's like that organic process is maybe not ideal, but it certainly is beneficial to have that, and it extends your team, and it also helps to fix the staffing problem so that when staffing opens up, maybe that's an opportunity for somebody to step into that. I've had folks from sales organizations, say, hey, I really want to be a part of the security narrative in the organization. I'd love to, get this, like basically translate what you all are doing to the sales team and make sure that folks are aware of it and all that. And that's like really, really important to be open to those conversations. And I think on the more toxic side, I've seen security folks like sort of shy away from sales. And we all have the jokes about like, if a sales engineer told me about security accurately, I'd be godsmacked, right? But it's if that is happening and folks aren't carrying your security story into the sales cycle, then you owe it to yourself to get an advocate in that space, because that's not where you're going to be spending the majority of your time, even if you want to.
Yeah. How do you generally get these security champions on board on your side? What has worked for you? Or how do you identify people who you feel like would be good security champions?
I think that people that ask questions in all hands about security topics, or we've talked about it before, doing presentations that aren't necessarily super technical and that don't have the parent vibe, like the mom and dad vibe of like, hey, I'm telling you what's wrong with this organization, with this product, with this company, or it's not another quote annoying repetitive security training, like something fun or something that is relevant and just beneficial to the company and the organization. I think it's like working to understand the functions of what other departments and people are doing. So a couple examples here. If you have a conversation around, like if you're everybody has these in, like there's a car group, in Slack. If your contributions to that group might be, hey, have you seen this latest Kia hack? Like, it's kind of interesting to see how people have, worked through this, and this is the remote car sort of, vulnerability or culture or whatever. And that's interesting to people in that group. Or if, a sales tool has a security deficiency, or, like try to relate your world to something adjacent to people's interests. And then that can maybe help you find security champions across the organization. I think just I think it's just being human and like bringing if you have a passion for security, bring that passion for security to things outside of the product, the project, and the business.
Yeah. Being a human, that's a tough one.
Yeah.
No, I think it's a good point. I think the relating, taking the topic and relating it for people. I mean, I think a lot of engineers, they go into engineering because they find it really interesting, like solving problems. And so security issues are, problems in the software somewhere along the line. So I think you see the same really smart people who love solving like a performance issue also love digging into like a very unique edge case that causes a security bug too. So I definitely agree with that. Like relating those two things together works. And I do think, to your point as well about not being parental, I feel like that's what turns off so many people to security, because it's just like, here comes security again. I mean, I always joke, it doesn't happen anymore because people have laptops, but walking around with a clipboard full of security findings, being like, hey, what's the due date, or when are we getting this finding fixed? But I mean, they still get hit with spreadsheets full of findings that I have to address, and false positives and things like that. So I definitely agree. Like, don't be parental and find ways to relate the topic to people so they already find it interesting is really good advice.
Yeah, I mean, like, be an ally to the people in your business. It's if you can. I think a lot of the conversations, like maybe a tip. I don't know if this works or not, but I approach a lot of conversations when I'm having security issues with teams is, I understand that this is your current state. This is what I need to do, and I'm trying to figure out how to make it work. So if you know that the business is driving engineers to finish something by a particular release date, and that what you are about to ask of them is going to interrupt their work, like, call it out immediately and see if, like, what it would take and how you can fight for them to get your thing done over theirs. Like, what is getting in the way of that security issue, so that you know who you have to address it with that's putting the pressure on that team.
Yeah.
I don't know how well that works, but it certainly makes my conversations easier than they were, 8 or 9 years ago.
Yeah. I do think, I think in that scenario where you're competing with business initiatives or things like that, like I've had that before. I think earlier in my career where I was like, hey, we need to get this fixed. And they're like, nope, we need to ship this. And, I brought it to my boss, they brought it to their boss, and say what you want about capitalism, but, revenue and profit overruled everything, and they went ahead with shipping something versus fixing it. And I think earlier in my career, I was like, well, this is BS. This culture is BS. Like, but the thing is, like, I don't think there's like accepting it and there's being like, no, I hate this place, I'm leaving. But I really think there's the middle ground of like, that is the reality, and ship the thing. Maybe it's insecure. How fast can we fix it? What is our plan to get it fixed? What is, like, do we have buy-in to be like, okay, we're not fixing it day one, we're going to fix it day two. Like, what is our risk window for that long? Like, just being a little more realistic about these things, because you're not going to win every battle, especially if you're a solo security person.
And you can't fix everything tomorrow, So, like, as long, I think if you're in an organization where you're constantly getting shut down and there is no movement on security work, you might not want to be there. It doesn't mean, it's like they're not doing anything, right? So you're calling out these risks. But if you call out the risks and you're doing security work and there is some measurable progress towards security and it's balanced with the business, and you can continually make more and more progress, then at least there's movement. And if there's movement, I think that's positive. And you're going to find different degrees of attention to that movement based on budgets and, whatever it is. So you have to be realistic. So that's the people side of things. In the last 8 to 10 minutes, is there anything that we can do on the technical side to help with this understaffing issue? And I really think that where I'd like to go with this is, this is relating to DevSecOps. And we talk about all of the people aspect of it and how you can work through that. That's a big theme. But then folks coming into this podcast with the idea of, automation and tooling and DevOps, what can we do to help with understaffed security teams?
I mean, I think we've talked about it before, but, I think part of the whole DevOps process and DevSecOps process is having more tooling to do more of the grunt work for you. But I think you have to be careful with not being like, all right, I don't have people to do AppSec reviews, so I'm throwing an AppSec tool in the mix, and that's going to solve our problem of finding bugs. I think, again, you got to approach everything open-minded to, it's not just fix every security bug that comes out of a tool, but go into it with, like, I know what I want to solve with this tool to scale up our checking for this particular issue, and I'm going to do a really good job of implementing that thing and then scale it across the company, versus being like, all right, I don't have enough people, I'm going to throw 10 different tools in the pipeline, it's going to spit out 1,000 findings, and it's up to the developers to fix everything. That's not really deputizing other people, that's just like screwing them over with a bunch of junk, because sorry, security vendors, they still pump out a huge amount of false positives and just misaligned risk on findings. But I do think that there's still value in fine-tuned tooling to help scale up your security in an understaffed environment. It just has to be done well. It can't be done just as a blanket across everything.
Yeah. No, security vendors, there's one vendor out there I'm not going to name, but all they do is scan on behalf of other people and submit false positives, and you have to fight
some kind of scorecard, would you say?
This is, yes, one of these companies does do this. But this is like a huge pet peeve of mine of like, you talk about not being an ally to your business teams, security vendors not being allies to security teams is like a big, I mean, it just makes me sick. You know, that is purely revenue generation for the sake of revenue generation. We're not going to adjust our rules. You're going to tell us why it's a false positive, and you're going to tell us that every 30 days.
Yeah.
And why are our rules broken? Because we're using out-of-the-box stock Nmap rules at scale across the internet.
Yeah.
Like, what? Yeah. So that rant over.
That's a topic for a different podcast.
Yeah.
That we should do at some point.
Vendor rants?
Vendor rants and just like security. I won't use the word scorecards, but
yeah,
sheets of data that have metrics about security.
Yeah. Yeah. Now I'm like triggered, and I've lost my train of thought. But I think we were talking about what can we do in automation and with security tooling, and you were making the point that you don't want to just spin up all these tools randomly and generate a bunch of results, and that's not the answer, right? It's not creating more visibility around security issues necessarily. And I agree. Yeah. I think you can automate a lot of the triage or the prioritization of those security issues. So I think when we get these initial tools together, whether it's SaaS tools or scanning tools or whatever it is, these things that are generating results, one of the big overwhelming moments for an understaffed security team is like, how are we going to address all of this? This is impossible. And I think you do have to draw a line in the sand and maybe automate that or figure out a way to get those to engineering teams as fast as possible. So you might look at it and say, okay, I have to triage like 30,000 issues because I've got all these potential false positives. Well, just take the high confidence, high and critical issues and focus all of your time on triaging and solving those, and make that your metric, so that you're not saying, hey, we moved the needle on 10 out of 50,000 issues. You're saying we've prioritized high and critical issues. The high and critical, high confidence issues are, we have 50 issues across the code base, and we've resolved 10 of them, and we're a one-person team. That's a good statement, and that is progress. That's the forward progress I'm talking about. And then I think the working on automating your workflows is also really important. Like, don't be the person that is just manually doing everything. Once you've done it manually a few times, be like, okay, like let me spend a couple of days like getting this to a more efficient, more optimized process so that I can focus on the other stuff. I think I've seen a lot of younger security engineers get into this, and I do this too. Like, I love completing tasks. Like when you finish something, you feel good about it, right? So you move from like task to task. But I think there is this thing that happens where once you get into a good rhythm, you're like, yeah, I did 10 tasks this week, or I did 10 of these this week. Whereas if you think about focusing on that week-long project to help you do more, you lose that ability to get that sort of dopamine hit of finishing the task. And so people just tend to churn away on doing the task, and that thing becomes more and more overwhelming because the backlog trickles up, right? So I think taking the time, or taking a period of time, maybe every month or every couple of months, to be like, okay, what have I done in the past month? What can I automate in my workflow, or what can I enhance in my workflow? I'm going to take like a week and do that, and be the builder for a week.
Yeah, I think that's a good point. I mean, going back to the original part of the conversation, what makes a good AppSec person is definitely automation, understanding how to work within the automation frameworks that are out there, and then also how to automate more of your own work beyond just throwing a tool into pipelines, things like that. But I mean, you're going to be working with a ton of data, and being able to automate reporting on that data, visualization of that data, like just managing it on your side is super helpful as well, because you can't just sit there and Excel all day, every day. You will do some of that, though. No avoiding that.
Yeah, it's true. And then the just so I have one more question to maybe cap it off. And it is how, with an understaffed security team that is obviously going to be overwhelmed, what are some ways that those teams can avoid being seen as the bottleneck and being avoided? Because I think that there is this thing that happens with an understaffed security team where as they take on more responsibility, whether that's stopping more work or getting more involved in the process, because they're understaffed, it's also them being more of a bottleneck to business process. And so there's a balance that has to be struck there, which seems like it's almost impossible. It's like if I insert more of a process with an understaffed team, I'm going to be a bottleneck. How can we avoid that? Any thoughts?
I mean, it's a good question. I think my first answer is I'm not sure if you can completely avoid it. I think there's some obvious answers like, automate and upskill and deputize like other people to help out with those processes. But I think to a degree, being a little Machiavellian, you kind of have to be like, yeah, you guys are asking us to make educated, recommendations on at scale across a huge organization and do that well. Like, we're not going to just, for lack of a better word, crap this out and put our kind of name on the line. Just as an example, because a lot of times we're dealing with risk and judging risk and making recommendations. Like, not everything can be rushed or automated or just shoved out the door. So I think sometimes you have to be like, as a business, you are choosing to slow down some process because, you're not putting enough emphasis on security in terms of budget or people or whatever. I think it's fair to say that at some points, like security people don't have a magic wand to solve the realities of the world, So I think you have to sometimes accept the fact that you are somewhat of a blocker. I mean, don't be one intentionally, and try to not create process that's like arcane and bureaucratic just to have process. Like, that doesn't help anything. But if you have process that is really helping with reducing risk or making good judgments about risk, like sometimes that takes time. That's what I feel like our value is security folks, is understanding the risk of something, understanding how to mitigate it, and communicating that up to people who make the decisions on to do X or Y. And sometimes you just can't solve that easily, at least not well.
Yeah, no, that's fair. I think once you have become some sort of blocking mechanism, like you have the ability to stop a process, that naturally it's going to have to scale with your staff. I think if you did take a step back, though, I do like this. I do like the idea of being involved in the process, almost like be an IDS instead of an IPS first. So you can be involved with the process and report on it rather than block it initially, so that you're creating visibility, and then become the blocker, as opposed to going straight into block process.
Yeah, I think that's good. Sadly, my brain goes to RACES, and I think it's like inform or advise, something like that. It's like you're not responsible for the outcome, but you're advised about it or informed about it. So at least you could add your 2 cents.
Yeah,
without necessarily being responsible for the outcome.
And even then, like, I mean, that goes even further back. Like, first, get visibility yourself, get informed, and resist the urge to involve yourself in it. Just collect the information. Then start to report on that information, and then start to like have an effect on the process. So that way you can be like, okay, well, this is the highest risk, as opposed to we have to block every build, or I'm inserting this SaaS tool, and now it has to go through every build. I think every SaaS deployment I've done now is always parallel to the build on the initial deployment, and then slowly we put it in the pipeline, and now it has to go through that pipeline in order. It's still detecting, but it has to go through as opposed to running parallel. And then after that, it becomes a blocking mechanism. So gradually Get them used to you first. Warm them up a little bit.
Be a human.
Yeah. Cool. Anything you want to add or have folks take away from this episode in your final few seconds?
I think the other mentality thing that I'll share is like don't be a martyr, don't be a savior. Like you are part of not to say you're a cog, but you're just a part of a bigger machine. Like
yeah.
I think we've all in security before been like, no, it is my job to keep this entire multi 10 million, 20, 100, $1 billion business secure. And it's like, no, bro, like you play one role. Like
yeah.
People are making decisions all over the place that you can't necessarily change for good or for bad. So don't like care about your job, be passionate about it, work hard, put in the effort, but like don't feel like your identity is wrapped up in the security of some company. Like you can't control all of it.
Yeah, I agree. And you will continually be shocked. So you should get used to it.
Set the bar very low early and it can only go up.
That's right. Cool. Well, thanks for joining us, everyone. It has been a longer episode, but we are continuing. We are still here, still fighting the security fight in relating to DevSecOps. So thank you for listening, and we'll see you next time.